Each year, more than 6,000 people disappear into these murky waters. They don't perish from drowning. They step on something unseen beneath the silt, a cobra with an extremely potent neurotoxic venom. Facing 700,000 snakebite cases annually in the flooded rural areas of South Asia, researchers found themselves desperate and proposed a bold biological weapon: to introduce thousands of red-bellied piranhas from the Amazon jungle and release them directly into flooded rice paddies to hunt snakes, using a terrifying predatory creature to eliminate another threat. But nature does not follow human scripts. Releasing the world's most dangerous freshwater predator into a foreign ecosystem did not solve the snake problem. It triggered a brutal chain reaction. It destroyed the entire food chain and made the cobras themselves 10 times more dangerous. This is how this flawed ecological experiment backfired on its creators. It all began with an ecological paradox created by humans themselves. To produce food, millions of acres of land were converted into flooded rice fields. When the monsoon season arrived, a vast amount of water transformed dry lands into shallow inland seas. The rising water deprived millions of kraits and cobras of their shelter. But these reptiles did not die from the rising water. In fact, kinematic analysis shows that cobras are excellent swimmers. They glide through water, almost silently. They use water to cool down and hunt for amphibians. The flooded rice fields accidentally became their new metropolis. The problem is that farmers are forced to wade into this murky water to harvest crops. Underwater visibility is zero. A farmer moving slowly through the mud cannot distinguish what is a rice root and what is the coiled tail of a cobra. When they step on it, the snake has no escape route. Its only instinct for survival is to sink 2 hollow fangs into the victim's leg and inject a dose of neurotoxin, a venom that interrupts the signal from the brain to the diaphragm, paralyzing the victim's respiratory system in less than 120 minutes. Approximately 27% of serious attacks occur just beneath the water's surface. Manual snake-catching methods become useless across thousands of square kilometers of flooded surface. The situation had become so desperate that an extreme solution was placed on the discussion table. If humans couldn't see the snakes in the murky water, they needed a hunter machine that didn't rely on sight to detect prey. And in the Amazon, they had just the thing. The red-bellied piranha, Pigocentrus naturari, was chosen not for its serrated teeth or a bite force 30 times its body weight. It was selected for a perfect locating mechanism akin to biological radar. In the murkiest waters of the Amazon River, the piranha goes temporarily blind. It evolved an extraordinary lateral line system that runs the length of its body. This network detects the slightest pressure fluctuations and microscopic vibrations in the water. As a cobra slithers through the rice paddy, the undulating motion of its body creates streaks of hydrodynamic waves. To the piranha's nervous system, this vibration is identical to the signal of an injured animal, an invitation impossible to refuse. The plan for ecological intervention seemed perfect on paper: to release piranhas into the canal and rice paddy system. The high density of predatory fish would eliminate any creature moving through the water. The cobras would be wiped out or no longer dare to approach the water. When the dry season arrived and the water receded, these invasive piranhas would be naturally eradicated or caught by humans for consumption, leaving no trace, a closed loop. However, when the laboratories opened their doors and the piranhas actually invaded the wild, scientists forgot one of the most fundamental laws of survival. A hunter never chooses the most dangerous prey, it chooses the easiest. And the rice paddy contained a giant food source that knew no defense. As swarms of piranhas dispersed throughout the flooded areas, they quickly encountered the cobras. But attacking a 2-meter, capable of fighting back, venom-spewing, and agile prey required too much energy. The piranhas immediately abandoned this target. They discovered the local ecosystem. Native freshwater fish, small carp, shrimp, and mollusks had absolutely no evolutionary defense mechanism against an Amazonian predator. For millions of years, these fish had never encountered a pack hunter with such a frightening speed of bite and tear. What happened next is what ecologists call a cascading food chain collapse. The piranhas enacted a unilateral population reduction. They didn't just eat to survive, they destroyed the very fabric of the ecosystem. The native fish population plummeted vertically in just a few weeks. The disappearance of native fish led to devastating consequences. Tadpoles and mosquito larvae were left without natural enemies. Rice paddies quickly turned into giant mosquito incubators, causing a sharp surge in malaria and dengue fever in rural communities. But the destruction did not end there. It was not just a biological collapse. It was a fatal blow to the primary economy. Freshwater fish is up to 60% of the animal protein in the daily diet of tens of millions of poor people in the region. When the catch in piranha-infested waters dropped by as much as 80%, food prices skyrocketed. Food scarcity and childhood malnutrition began to seem like an inseparable shadow. Humans brought in piranhas to protect farmers, but these same fish were now taking away their last source of livelihood. Do you think the loss of the local fishing industry was the worst? No. The real tragedy was just beginning, because as the source of easily caught fish dwindled, thousands of underwater piranhas began to experience extreme food shortages, and a hungry piranha breaks all safety rules. Depletion of food sources. The survival instinct kicked in. Hungry schools of piranhas stopped being picky. Now, anything that vibrated underwater became a target, including dangerous cobras. Underwater clashes began, but the piranhas did not kill the snakes immediately. They attacked, inflicting small wounds, biting tails, and cornering these reptiles. As a result, thousands of venomous snakes, lightly injured, were driven into a state of extreme panic. Snake physiology has a special defense mechanism. When they experience extreme stress and feel a constant threat of death, their adrenal glands secrete a large amount of hormones, while their venom glands produce a more concentrated toxin than usual. Instead of snakes avoiding humans, the rice paddies were now filled with snakes at maximum toxicity, ready to attack anything that touched them with multiplied aggression. To escape the jaws of the piranhas, the snakes were forced to fundamentally change their behavior. They left their usual hunting grounds and, in a panic, rushed onto land earlier than expected. This ecological migration pushed millions of snakes directly into human-inhabited areas. Soon, the community discovered that venomous snakes were no longer confined to the rice paddies. They were coiled under beds, hidden in shoes, climbing into wood piles, and kitchen corners. Land and home bite incidents surged, with much greater severity because the venom load had been stimulated to its limit. The ecological project had completely backfired. It did not control the snakes. It merely turned them into more ferocious biological threats and drove them into people's bedrooms. By then, those who created the project pinned their hopes on a last resort, waiting for the dry season. When the water receded, the piranha schools would be exposed on the mud and perish. But humans, as always, underestimated nature's resilience. The assumption that the rice paddy system was an isolated lake was the most fatal error of the entire project. When flooding peaked, water from the rice paddies did not stay put. It flowed over the embankments and connected directly to major river systems and large basins. The schools of piranhas, with their powerful swimming abilities, were not so clumsy as to remain in shallow puddles. They followed the current, burst out of the rice paddies, and infiltrated directly into the country's great water arteries. There, the water was deeper, never dried up in the dry season, and food sources became abundant again. From a biological control tool, the piranha officially became a permanent invasive alien species. It established new reproductive populations in rivers where it had never been before, permanently altering the local ecosystem and wiping out valuable and rare aquatic species. According to a report by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, invasive species cause at least $423 billion in damage to the global economy annually. The complete eradication of an aquatic species hidden within a network of interconnected rivers covering tens of thousands of square kilometers is impossible, both technically and financially. Even using chemicals to kill the piranhas would be equivalent to poisoning the nation's entire water supply for human needs. The door slammed shut permanently. The Amazonian creature had officially taken up residence in a settlement that could not be erased. Instead of solving one problem, human intervention spawned two simultaneous catastrophes: aggressive snakes on land and an Amazonian predator dominating underwater. When all attempts to interfere with the food chain lead to destruction, science is forced to confront a central truth. The root of the problem is not in eliminating snakes, but in the human system itself. Thousands of people die annually, not because nature is too cruel, but due to a breakdown in the logistical structure of medical care. When a person is bitten by a cobra, the golden hour countdown begins. It takes between 1 to 6 hours for the neurotoxin to freeze the respiratory system. The only solution is not underwater, but inside glass vials, the anti-venom. But there is a deadly barrier. The serum requires an extremely strict cold chain. It must be stored at a precise temperature between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius. In rural areas prone to frequent flooding, electrical infrastructure is almost non-existent. Local health posts cannot store the serum. Victims have to travel tens of kilometers on muddy roads to a central hospital, and most do not survive the journey. Great minds spent millions of dollars trying to alter the behavior of wild animals, although the real solution was incredibly practical and mundane. Instead of importing predatory fish, every village health post should have been equipped with tiny, ultra-compact solar refrigerators. Instead of trying to eliminate snakes, high-density, puncture-resistant vulcanized rubber boots, which snake fangs could not penetrate, should have been distributed for free. The cruelest irony of this tragedy is the question of cost. While millions of dollars were wasted on high-risk biological intervention projects, a pair of snake-bite-proof rubber boots costs only around $1. A dose of life-saving serum costs approximately $50 to $100. We chose to alter the course of millions of years of evolution instead of providing our fellow humans with the most basic and cheapest of shields. In the end, the Piranha project left a bitter but invaluable legacy. It reminds us that the Earth is not a sterile laboratory, and ecosystems are not computer lines of code that humans can hit and delete at will. We are not creatures placed above the ecosystem to control it. We are merely a fragile link within it. When we pull a brick from nature's foundation to build our quest for control upon it, the entire ecological tower collapses on our heads. What are your thoughts on the fine line between protecting humans and destroying nature? If you were faced with a similar crisis, would you choose intervention or follow the natural course of things? Leave your perspective in the comments section.
In 1859, one man released 24 rabbits into their natural habitat. 70 years later, their numbers had grown to 10 billion. Their rate of spread was so high that they covered 130 kilometers of continental surface annually, an unprecedented record for any animal species on Earth. Australia is now a battlefield on a massive scale, with the government compelled to release the most dangerous strains of viruses from Korea and Europe into the environment. All this with the aim of protecting the land from the devastation caused by this rodent. There is a unique paradox. Australia has so many rabbits that they have become a national disaster. Yet rabbit meat in its supermarkets costs more than prime beef. Humans have tried everything, from explosives and monumental fencing to genetically modified viruses. But rabbits always find a way to evolve and adapt. We are witnessing a war where nature has surpassed human control over technology. In 1859, a colonist named Thomas Austin released 24 wild rabbits brought from England onto his farm in Victoria to satisfy his passion for hunting. His most famous quote at the time was that releasing a few rabbits would cause no harm and might even provide a sense of home. 6 years later, Austin had already destroyed 20,000 rabbits in the same area, but it was too late. Australia was a rabbit paradise. Mild winters, abundant food, and most importantly, the absence of natural predators like foxes or wolves. A pair of rabbits can breed up to 7 times a year. At a movement speed of 130 kilometers per year, this population made the fastest ecological invasion in mammalian history. By 1920, the rabbit population on the continent had reached 10 billion. The consequence was horrifying devastation. Rabbits don't just eat, they devour seeds and the bark of young trees, preventing forest regeneration. When vegetation disappears, the topsoil is severely eroded. Millions of hectares of agricultural land turn into desert. At least 20 native animal species have been pushed to the brink of extinction due to habitat and food loss. Soil studies in South Australia show that the presence of rabbits reduces vegetation cover to less than 5% in many areas. When the land is no longer held by roots, huge dust storms begin to rage over the continent, carrying billions of tons of fertile soil into the ocean. Experts estimate that it takes at least a century to form 1 centimeter of topsoil, but rabbits can destroy it in just a decade. This devastation affects not only nature, but also causes very serious economic losses for the country. Australian agriculture in the early 20th century was losing about $200 million a year, equivalent to billions of dollars in today's currency. Before resorting to biological agents, Australia tried to contain them with the world's most massive physical measures. Between 1901 and 1907, the rabbit-proof fence, or bunny fence, was built, stretching over 3,250 kilometers from north to south of the continent. At the time, it was the longest continuous fence in the world. However, this campaign did not achieve its goal. Rabbits had managed to cross the construction zone before the fence was completed. They dug burrows under it, or simply waited for floods to destroy some sections of the fence to pass en masse. The government had to hire patrols who inspected the fence daily on camels, but these efforts did not yield proportional effectiveness. The fence's construction was designed with immense durability, with thick steel mesh buried 30 centimeters underground. However, the problem was not the material, but the gigantic geographical scale. Maintaining 3,000 kilometers of fence in desert conditions was impossible. Other animals, like kangaroos and emus, constantly damaged the steel mesh, creating huge breaches through which rabbits could pass. Furthermore, Australian rabbits had developed remarkable survival skills. They could climb sand dunes accumulated by the wind to jump over the fence, or use dried-up summer streams to move through sections of the barrier. After the fence was built, Australians moved on to using traps, chemical control methods, and direct extermination techniques. Millions of rabbits were destroyed each year, but this figure meant almost nothing compared to their breeding rate. A new ecological system had already formed, in which the rabbit had become the absolutely dominant species in pastures. In 1950, Australia decided to implement its most drastic measure, the myxoma virus. This virus causes myxomatosis in rabbits and is transmitted by mosquitoes and fleas. The initial results were very encouraging. Within just 2 years, 99.8% of infected rabbits were eliminated. The rabbit population decreased from 600 million to less than 100 million, but nature always finds a way. The law of natural selection immediately kicked in. Rabbits with genes resistant to the virus survived and began replicating this genetic material. Simultaneously, the virus itself also evolved to cause less extreme effects, as an effective virus should not incapacitate its host too quickly before it has a chance to spread. By the late 50s, the mortality rate from myxoma had dropped to just 25%. Biological warfare had reached a stalemate. The failure of myxoma led to a biotechnological arms race between scientists and rabbits. Throughout the 60s and 70s, Australian rabbits not only became resistant to the virus, but also grew stronger. Their immune systems learned to recognize viral proteins and neutralize them before the onset of disease. This is a classic example of host-pathogen coevolution. In 1995, Australia released a second agent, the calicivirus, also known as RHDVD, which causes rabbit hemorrhagic disease. This virus was extremely dangerous, capable of incapacitating rabbits within 48 hours by causing multiple organ failure. Again, the rabbit population plummeted, allowing Australian agriculture to save approximately $1 billion annually. But history repeated itself, and rabbits once again developed natural immunity. The calicivirus was initially tested on Wardang Island, but an unexpected incident occurred. The virus escaped the island and spread to the mainland via air currents and insects, even before the experiment concluded. Within just a few months, the virus wiped out rabbits in an area twice the size of Germany. This incredibly rapid spread was initially hailed as a victory, but it also accelerated the development of resistance faster than anticipated. By 2010, scientists discovered that rabbits in the southern states were already completely immune to the original strain of RHDVD. By 2017, Australia had deployed the latest strain, named RHDV1K5, a variant from Korea. The objective was no longer complete eradication, but to keep the rabbit population as low as possible, currently around 200 million, so the ecosystem had a chance to recover. The K5 variant was chosen because it could perform more effectively in humid climates where previous strains tended to weaken. Across over 600 test sites nationwide, K5 helped reduce the remaining rabbit population by an additional 42%. However, a new viral mutation called rh-DVD2 emerged, beginning to compete with the human-introduced virus. rh-DVD2 also affects young kids, a group previously largely spared by earlier viruses. While this helps reduce rabbit numbers, it also demonstrates how unpredictable biological factors can be. Humans never have complete control over what they release into the environment. The big question is why, with hundreds of millions of wild rabbits, rabbit meat has not become a popular and cheap food source in Australia, as it has with kangaroo meat. The answer lies in the very viruses humans have released. Firstly, from a food safety perspective, contemporary wild rabbits carry a significant number of pathogens and parasites in their bodies. Although the myxoma and calicivirus are not transferable to humans, no consumer wants to purchase meat derived from an animal population controlled by biological agents. Secondly, there's the economic issue. To sell rabbit meat in major supermarket chains, the meat must come from supervised farms. However, rabbit farming in Australia presents immense cost challenges. Since the rabbit-killing viruses spread via insects, they do not distinguish between wild and farmed rabbits. To protect a rabbit farm, a farmer must vaccinate every animal. The cost of vaccination per animal ranges from 10 to 40 Australian dollars. For an average farm with 1,000 rabbits, these expenses can amount to $40,000 annually. This drives the price of rabbit meat to $40 to $50 per kilogram, making it several times more expensive than premium beef or kangaroo meat. Furthermore, Australian meat export regulations are extremely stringent. Wild rabbits caught in the open cannot directly enter the food processing chain. The meat must be tested for chemical residues, as Australia frequently uses bait containing 1,1080, an extremely potent rabbit toxin. The cost of chemical analysis for each meat unit significantly exceeds the cost of the rabbit itself. Instead, kangaroo meat is preferred because kangaroos are a native species. Their bodies are clean, they are not targeted by viruses, and their meat contains no chemical residues. Thirdly, Australia's wild rabbits inhabit extreme environments and are forced to constantly move in search of food, making their musculature very tough and sinewy. Compared to rabbits farmed for meat in Europe, Australian wild rabbits have very low culinary value. From a logistical standpoint, the collection of wild rabbits is also a major hurdle. Rabbits are scattered across millions of square kilometers of rugged terrain. Establishing a procurement and refrigerated truck transportation network from remote regions to major cities is not a financially viable option. In Australia, rabbit control is considered more of a public service than a resource utilization activity. Hunters typically cull rabbits only to protect their farms and leave the carcasses in the wild for scavengers. The war against rabbits has become one of the most costly environmental lessons in history. Every attempt by humans to rectify a previous mistake typically leads to a new era. When the rabbit population got out of control, Australians introduced red foxes to hunt them. Consequently, the red fox abandoned the fast rabbits and turned to native marsupials, which were slower and easier to catch. Australia now faces 2 invasions instead of 1. Data from Australia's Department of the Environment show that red foxes and feral cats are directly responsible for the extinction of at least 27 small mammal species. This phenomenon is known as a cascading effect or trophic cascade in ecology. When rabbit populations surge, they become a food source for a large number of invasive predators. When rabbit populations plummet due to viruses, these predators do not disappear, but descend with even greater intensity upon native species like possums or bilbies. Currently, Australia has transitioned to a new strategy called integrated management. This combines biological viruses, mechanical burrow destruction, and the protection of native predators, such as the wedge-tailed eagle. One of the most ambitious steps today is the Easter Bilby project. Australians are attempting to shift cultural thinking by replacing the image of the rabbit with that of the bilby, a long-eared native marsupial resembling a rabbit. They want children to perceive the rabbit as a symbol of destruction rather than tenderness. Major Australian food companies have discontinued the release of Easter bunny figurines, replacing them with bilby figures to aid habitat restoration. Furthermore, scientists are exploring a definitive solution: genetic engineering, also known as gene drive. Using CRISPR-Cas9, they can engineer carrier rabbits with a gene that produces only male offspring. When these rabbits are released into the wild, they will rapidly disrupt the sex balance of the entire population, leading to a natural collapse of their numbers. However, this technology is highly controversial worldwide. European scientists fear that if a genetically modified rabbit accidentally enters Europe, it could negatively impact local rabbits, which are a crucial part of the region's ecosystem. Rabbits in Australia have evolved into organisms with extreme adaptive capabilities. They can withstand drought, resist viruses, and reproduce at a dizzying pace. Even when humans employ the most advanced biotechnologies, rabbits still find a way to survive. On this continent, rabbits are not merely an animal species, but a constant reminder of how ruthless nature can become when the balance is disturbed by human hands. Up until the year 2024, Australia continued to spend over $25 million annually on rabbit research and control alone. The total economic damage over the past 150 years is estimated to exceed $50 billion. This is too high a price for one person's decision to release 24 rabbits in the last century. The war is not yet over. Australia is investigating genetic engineering to render male rabbits sterile. But will this be the ultimate solution? Or will it once again be the start of a new biological problem that we are currently unable to foresee? Only time will tell.